I am not a historian, but neither are you. So, how about we the people learn this stuff together? Welcome to US 101.
This past Sunday, on July 9th, the History Channel stopped its endless marathons of Pawn Stars, Ancient Aliens, and American Pickers to show something about actual history. It was a documentary about the famous American aviator Amelia Earhart and how, based on this photo, she and her navigator Fred Noonan may have survived their infamous crash from 1937. The photo, which was found in the National Archives by former federal agent Les Kinney, allegedly shows Noonan and Earhart in the Marshall Islands after having been captured by the Japanese. But let me slow down a little bit. I might be skipping ahead. You guys all do know who Amelia Earhart is, right? I mean, you all know that name. For those of you that don't know that name, I highly recommend you go sit in the corner right now and put on that dunce cap and catch up with the rest of us. And for those of you that do know Amelia Earhart, hopefully all of you that are watching this episode, you'll know that once again, she was a famous American aviator whose first bit of fame came in 1928 when she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. Well, except for the fact that she didn't actually fly the plane across the Atlantic in 1928. She was actually just a passenger in the plane. Two male pilots were flying the aircraft. But she was the first woman to actually be in an airplane as it crossed across the Atlantic. So technically, first woman to cross the Atlantic. Regardless, she received a hero's welcome when they landed in the UK, and then she got another one when she came back to the United States. Parade down the Canyon of Heroes, she met the president, all that good stuff. And with her newfound fame, being dubbed Queen of the Sky, Earhart used her newfound notoriety to do many things, like go on a lecture tour, she published a book, and she also endorsed quite a few products. And with all that money that she was making, she funneled all that money into her love of aviation. Because later, in 1928, she would become the first woman to fly across the North American continent. Later on, she would go to become a competitive flyer, and then in 1932, she would become the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. Except this time, she flew the plane, and she flew it solo. No crew, just her. But even with all the success that Amelia Earhart achieved throughout her career, the main reason that everybody knows her is because of her plane crash in 1937 and the mysterious disappearance that surrounded that plane crash. People to this day are still asking questions about Amelia Earhart's disappearance, thus the reason we have a documentary about it. What happened to the plane? Did she die in the plane crash? Did something else happen during the plane crash? Did she and Fred Noonan survive? These questions have been asked time and time again. So for today's episode, we're going to look at the final flight of Amelia Earhart. First off, she didn't only try to fly around the world once in 1937, she tried it twice. The first time she tried it was in March of 1937. She took off from Oakland, California, and then landed in Honolulu, Hawaii to refuel and perform any maintenance that the plane might have needed. But during her takeoff from Hawaii, the plane ground looped. If you don't know what ground looping is, that means that when the plane is trying to take off, one side of the plane tilts to one side, the wing hits the ground, and then the rest of the plane kind of loops around that. That's called ground looping. She ground looped the plane. It damaged the plane, it couldn't take off, so they had to send the plane back to California for repairs. First attempt at around the world, then it failed. But that did not slow down the Queen of the Sky, man, because after her plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, was fixed, she flew it from Oakland to Miami, Florida, where she announced once again she would try to fly around the world. She took off from Miami, Florida on June 1st with her navigator Fred Noonan and made multiple stops along the way, including stops in South America, Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. She had flown 22,000 miles, a long distance, and was heading into the final stretch of the journey when she and Noonan were preparing to take off from Lae Airfield in New Guinea. And this part of the journey would take place exclusively over the Pacific Ocean and was the final 7,000 miles of the flight. So on July 2nd, 1937, Earhart and Noonan take off into the sky, and their goal is to land on Howland Island, this small strip of land that was owned by the US. They were going to land there to refuel, again, perform any maintenance before continuing on the journey. All the while, US ships, including the Itasca, are deployed to provide Earhart with any sort of aid. And this is when things start to go horribly wrong. Earhart and Noonan were approaching Howland Island, and they radioed the Itasca their current weather conditions. But when the ship tried to send a radio transmission back to the plane didn't receive it. So Earhart continued sending radio transmissions to the ship, keeping them updated on their distance, their position, what the weather was like, their fuel. But no matter how many times the ship tried, The plane never got their transmissions. Ultimately, it was like radio silence. At one point, Earhart radios to the ship, quote, "We must be on you, but cannot see you. But gas is running low. Have been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying at 1,000 feet." End quote. She tries again to get the ship to send any sort of radio contact so that she can get a bearing on the ship. But no matter how many times the ship tries, radio connection cannot be established. So the ship tries sending Morse code. And then Earhart radios back to the ship, "I got the Morse code, but it ain't helping me tell you where you are. I still don't know where you guys are. I have no idea what distance we're at." The final radio transmission from Amelia Earhart came at 8:43 a.m. on July 2nd, 1937. And she said, quote, "We are on the line 157337. We will repeat this message. We will repeat on 6210 kilocycles. Wait." End quote. Meanwhile, since the Itasca couldn't send radio transmissions to the plane, what they start doing is they start sending these thick plumes of black smoke into the air in the hopes that Earhart and Noonan will see them from the sky, but it was to no avail. Ultimately, the plane runs out of fuel, and the plane, Earhart and Noonan, run into the Pacific Ocean. A search party began an hour after the plane hit the water, and it said that the Itasca was the first ship to begin the search party, and then ultimately a good majority of the U.S. Navy would enter that search party looking for the plane and its passengers. But unfortunately, even with all their resources, the search party never found a plane, Earhart, or Noonan. Eventually, the search party was called off, and Earhart was officially pronounced dead on January 5, 1939. They waited 2 years in the hopes that maybe she had survived and maybe she was going to pop up, but never happened. Now, following Earhart and Noonan's disappearance, many theories have popped up over the years trying to figure out what exactly happened to them. Some theories are steeped in fact and evidence, while many others are simply just conspiracy theories that people like to make up because, it's fun. One of those theories, now strengthened by the finding of this photo in the National Archives, is that Earhart and Noonan survived their plane crash, but they didn't crash near Howland Island. They crashed closer to the Marshall Islands. They were captured by the Japanese military and were ultimately put to death in 1939. Others have suggested that the plane crashed near an island called Nikomororo, and both Earhart and Noonan died there. And then, of course, there are the many conspiracy theories. Some of them say that Amelia Earhart took this flight around the world so that she could spy on the Japanese for FDR. Other conspiracy theories say that she survived the plane crash, she went back to the United States, and she moved to New Jersey, and she changed her name and her identity, and she was living a quiet life under the radar. Again, just nonsense, unfounded, but people want a good story. People like urban myth, or people like urban legends. What do you think happened to the plane? What do you think happened to Amelia Earhart? What do you think happened to Fred Noonan? Do you think that they survived the plane crash? Do you think that they landed on the island as evidenced by this photo and they were captured by the Japanese? Do you think that Amelia Earhart might still be alive out there somewhere? No, that would be impossible, because she was almost 40 years old in 1937. So you add 80 years to that. At this point, she would be nearly 120 years old. No, she's definitely dead. She's definitely dead. Unless, of course, when she crashed, she came across a secret mutant base and was granted the powers of immortality, and soon Amelia Earhart will rise from the ashes and enslave all of us. And that, my friends, is it for another episode of US 101. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thanks to all of you that have subscribed to the channel, for liking the videos, for sharing them, for commenting in the comment section. Hopefully you guys will comment in the comment section for this video, and let's have a lively debate, because I'm sure all you guys are going to have theories grounded in solid evidence. As always, guys, you can follow us on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those links down below in the description box. And I do recommend you follow us on social media, because if you guys want clues and hints as to what the next episode of US 101 is going to be, that's where I post all that stuff. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. Also want to give a special shout out to this week's viewer intro from Iron Man. Actually, it wasn't Iron Man. It was actually my kid brother Joey in his Iron Man mask. He wanted to submit an intro. I liked it. It was nice. Joey, thank you, dummy. I appreciate it. For those of you guys that want to submit your own viewer intros to US 101, maybe wearing your own superhero mask, you can send those intros to ushistory1882@gmail.com. Send me your viewer intros, and you could be kicking off a future episode of US 101. On that note, guys, I will see you next Tuesday for another episode. I am all done, and I was going to make a "here comes the airplane" joke, but that'd be in bad taste. But still, I'm gonna fly off the screen anyway.